This is Mac OS Ken.
A record-breaking quarter for Apple. It is Thursday, the 28th of January, 2021. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Sunbasket, delivering oven-ready meals that are fast, fresh, and delicious. Get $35 off your order using promo code MacOSKen at sunbasket.com/MacOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. Over the past few weeks, we've heard various analysts guess that Apple's revenue for the December quarter would come in over $100 billion. Revenue crushed that. The highest estimate we'd heard from any analyst was revenue of $110 billion. Revenue crushed that. On Wednesday, Apple announced all-time record revenue of $111.4 billion. That represented a 21% increase from the $91.8 billion Apple took in for the same quarter a year earlier, the company's last quarterly record. Revenue from products came in at about $95.7 billion, up from $79.1 billion a year earlier, an increase of 21%, while revenue from services came in at about $15.8 billion, up from $12.7 billion in the year-ago quarter, an increase of about 24%. All of that was on earnings per share of $1.68, an increase of 35%, and another all-time record. International sales accounted for 64% of the quarter's revenue, according to Apple, which claimed double-digit growth in every geography they track. Sales in the Americas rose from $41.4 billion in the year-ago quarter to $46.3 billion, an increase of about 12%. Europe was up about 17%, Japan was up about 34%, China was up a crazy-sounding 56%, and the rest of Asia-Pacific was up about 11%. Looking at hardware in general, Apple CEO Tim Cook said on Wednesday's earnings call that there are over 1.65 billion devices in Apple's installed base, most of which are iPhones. There are over 1 billion of those active in people's pockets and purses today. iPhone revenue came in at about $65.6 billion, up from $55.96 billion a year earlier, an increase of 17%. Citing numbers from 415 Research, Apple CFO Luca Maestri said that customer satisfaction for the iPhone 12 family in the U.S. is 98%. While a few models are still hard to get, the company expects to be at supply-demand balance sometime in the current quarter. Now, I am going to repeat myself a time or two because there are numbers that should not be missed. There are currently 1 billion active iPhones on the planet. We'll lump Mac and iPad together, mostly because Maestri did. Mac revenue was $8.8 billion versus the previous year's $7.2 billion, an increase of 21%. In terms of growth, iPad was the belle of the ball. Apple's tablet took in revenue of $8.4 billion from the previous year's so close to $6 billion, an increase of 41%. According to the CFO, iPad hit an all-time record in Japan and was up in all geographies tracked by Apple. Customer satisfaction for the Mac stands at 93%, while it's 94% for iPad. And the company keeps landing on that amazing buyer number. Half the people who bought an iPad or a Mac last quarter were new to their respective platforms. The category wearables, home, and accessories pulled in revenue of $12.97 billion, up from the previous year's $10 billion, an increase of 30%. The category set new records in every geography. 75% of Apple Watch buyers in the December quarter were new to Apple Watch. Pulling out just the wearables, which includes Apple Watch, AirPods, and Beats headphones, Apple's wearable segment is now the size of a Fortune 120 company, according to Maestri and Cook. And did I mention services? I think I did, but let's do it again just for fun. Services brought in revenue of $15.8 billion, up from $12.7 billion in the previous holiday quarter, an increase of about 24%. For payment services, CFO Maestri says nearly 90% of stores in the U.S. now accept Apple Pay. Paid accounts were said by Maestri to have grown double digits in every geography tracked by Apple, while paid subscriptions are growing like weeds, or things you actually want to see grow that do so in a big way. The company has hit 620 million paid subscriptions, an increase of 120 million in the last year. Hard to believe that we are where we are a year later, but we are. For that reason, Apple has once again given revenue guidance a miss, though the company was happy to add a splash of color. They expect revenue to be higher this quarter than it was for the same quarter last year. It won't come near last quarter, though, following the holiday quarter the way a March quarter normally does. CFO Maestri did toss in a couple of caveats, though. Services are going to offer a particularly tough comparison. That's because when China and other regions went inside for the March quarter last year, they actually stayed inside, buying games, watching videos, and doing other servicey type stuff. Maestri says the services business faces a tougher year-over-year comparison. Also, he pointed out that year-over-year growth in the wearables, home, and accessories category will slow down compared to the December quarter. To me, that sounds like normal holiday to post-holiday stuff, but he felt the need to point it out, so I felt the need to pass it along. Now, as cool as Apple's numbers were, and they were, I'm a real fan of the wetware stuff, by which I mean Apple's humanity. Cook talked about the App Store's small business program and the difference it's already making in the lives of some developers who make under $1 million a year from their apps. He also talked about Apple's place in the holidays, saying the highest volume of FaceTime calls ever happened this past Christmas. And, as he tends to do, Apple CEO leaned into acknowledging and thanking Apple employees. In his statement in Apple's press release announcing earnings, Cook's quote begins, "This quarter for Apple wouldn't have been possible without the tireless and innovative work of every Apple team member worldwide." I'd like to share with you a couple of passages from Cook's prepared remarks on the earnings call. Particularly after the events of the last few weeks, said the CEO, we're focused on how we can help in a moment of great national need, because none of us should have any illusions about the challenges we face as we begin a new chapter in the American story. Hope for healing, for unity, and for progress begins with and depends on addressing the things that continue to wound us. In our communities, we see how every burden, from COVID-19 to the resulting economic challenges to the closure of in-person learning for students, falls heaviest on those who have always faced structural barriers to opportunity and equality. From there, he talked about the Racial Equity and Justice Initiative projects Apple announced earlier this month, including financial investments the company's making, as well as the Propel Center being built in Atlanta, and the first Apple Developer Academy in the U.S., planned for Detroit. He also talked about the money Apple has raised through Product Red, and the money and time Apple employees have donated to charitable causes over the past several years. Then a truly inspirational bit of rhetoric. As proud as this makes us, said the CEO, we know that there is much more to be done. Looking forward, we continue to contend with the COVID-19 pandemic, but we must also now work to imagine what we will inherit on the other side. When a disease recedes, we cannot simply assume that healing follows. Even now, we see the deep scars that this period has left on our communities. Trust has been compromised. Opportunities have been lost. Entire portions of our lives that we took for granted, schools for our children, meetings with our colleagues, small businesses that have endured for generations, have simply disappeared. It will take a society-wide effort across the public and private sectors as individuals and communities, every one of us, to ensure that what's ahead of us is not simply the end of a disease, but the beginning of something durable and hopeful for those who gave, suffered, and endured during this time. At Apple, we have every intention to be partners in this effort, and we look forward to working in communities around the world to make it possible. We'll get to a bit of the analyst Q&A in a moment, but first a word from Sunbasket, delivering oven-ready meals that are fast, fresh, and delicious. If your meal planning is in a rut, why not try something different with Sunbasket? Actually, try lots of different things with their fresh and ready meals. Every Sunbasket meal is filled with only premium quality real food, including organic fresh produce, antibiotic and hormone-free meats, and sustainably sourced seafood from suppliers that they know and trust. And trust me when I tell you, it all tastes great. You can try a meal kit, like the Mojo tacos with salsa verde I had recently, or the fresh and ready butter chicken with basmati rice pilaf that I also had recently. There's lots to love about the fresh and ready meals, like the fact that all you have to do is heat and eat. Then there's the price, just $8.99, so they're good for your body and your budget. And you can try them for less. Right now, Sunbasket is offering $35 off your order when you go right now to sunbasket.com/macOSKen and enter promo code macOSKen at checkout. That's sunbasket.com/macOSKen and enter promo code macOSKen at checkout for $35 off your order. sunbasket.com/macOSKen and enter promo code macOSKen. We'll not go through every question and answer today, but we will hit a few that hit me. I was fascinated by mentions of China. B of A analyst Wamsi Mohan wanted to know how the iPhone 12 line had beaten expectations despite its late launch. Well, first of all, CFO Maestri said, "It's a great bunch of phones." He then bragged on Apple's ability to ramp production as well as it did. He also pointed to the popularity of iPhone 12 Pro and iPhone 12 Pro Max, particularly in China, where there may have been some pent-up demand for a 5G iPhone. Not that it's just about China. iPhone is doing well around the world. That said, the company is optimistic that it will hit supply-demand balance sometime this quarter. Mohan also wondered whether execs would comment on switchers to iPhone versus iPhone users upgrading to a new 12. CEO Cook said that both switchers and upgraders increased last quarter versus the same quarter a year earlier. He added that the company saw the largest number of upgrades in a single quarter ever. Looking for more on China was Shannon Cross of Cross Research. Obviously, iPhone helped boost China for Apple, but what else played in, and are we looking at a China that's back to normal? CEO Cook said that categories besides iPhone, including iPad, Mac, and devices in the wearables, home, accessories category were all above the company's average. As to whether China is back to normal, Cook indicated that the company is sort of beyond COVID, in a recovery stage. While he acknowledged reports of localized recurrence this quarter, Apple's not seen that reflected in its business. Seriously though, one should not undersell iPhone. 5G is well established in China. Cook suspects that there was some level of anticipation for an iPhone 5G. JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee asked about customer engagement for iPhone outside of the US and China, with an emphasis on Europe. Cook acknowledged that Europe is behind on the 5G front. Korea, on the other hand, is loaded. He basically sees it as a patchwork world of 5G. Some places are covered, some places are spotty, and some places have no 5G. but 5G is rolling out, which means room for growth ahead. Proving that there is a right way and a wrong way to ask a question, both Morgan Stanley analyst Katie Huberty and Bernstein research analyst Tony Sacconaghi wanted to know about Apple's roadmap. Given how difficult limited visibility into Apple's roadmap makes it for investors, Huberty wondered whether Cook would talk about what Apple looks for in terms of future initiatives. Cook gave her a few metrics. Is this a product that we would want to use ourselves? Is it a big enough market to be in? They also look for products at the intersection of hardware, software, and services because there's magic at that intersection. The CEO stressed that there are good opportunities out there, segments where Apple has relatively low share in big markets in a number of cases. Sacconaghi, on the other hand, hinted at major acquisitions before asking Cook to draw him a roadmap for the next 5 years. Only once on yesterday's call did Apple have to say we don't guide past the current quarter. Seems fitting it was to the Sacconator that he said that. What Cook would say is that Apple has its strongest product portfolio ever. It's got a strong pipeline. It's got an installed base hitting new heights. They're growing switchers and upgrades. The services segment keeps growing. While wearables are now the size of a Fortune 120 company, they're still in the early stage of the wearables game. Then there are emerging markets where there's still plenty of room for growth for iPhone, Mac, and iPad. Look at India, for example. Business there doubled last quarter, but business there is still small compared to the size of the opportunity, and there are other markets like India. Plus, they're picking up traction in the enterprise. Then we get to the new stuff that he's not going to talk about coming up in the next 5 years. As SmackDowns go, it was fairly genteel. Now, that's not even close to all the questions and answers, though. Those are the ones that tickled my mind grapes. If you'd like to hear more, I'm guessing you know how. You can catch a replay of the call on Apple's investor relations page, investor.apple.com. It's also out as a podcast. Act fast, though. The call's only available for a couple of weeks. Coming up in a few minutes, I still want Apple to get into healthcare, while all Brian Chaffin wants is to bum a ride. We're talking services we would like from Apple in a few minutes. Look for that show and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken Live goes live again today, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/KenRay. Catch it live or on replay there. You can also grab the audio podcast, macOS Ken Live, wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Sunbasket. Get $35 off your order using promo code macOSKen at sunbasket.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.